Welcome to The Conversation with Pat Harvey. In this series, I'll dive into various topics and issues with my guests in a more intimate and unfiltered setting. And my guest today gets paid to be a foodie, and for years, he remained anonymous, but now he is coming out of hiding, so to speak. I'm talking about Bill Addison, restaurant critic for the LA Times. Welcome. And Bill, I just want to add, this is your first television interview.
It is my first,
so
it is my
honored.
Television debut. Thanks for having me.
This is incredible. Now, we're going to get to your background in a minute, but first we want to start with your choice to unveil your face to the public. This happened last year, and I'm going to quote you, saying in an article that, quote, facelessness has a shelf life. So talk to me about what led up to that decision.
Facelessness has a shelf life in 2026.
Uh-huh.
So when I started reviewing restaurants in 2002 at a small newspaper in Atlanta, Creative Loafing, you might remember that paper from way back.
Yes, because I worked there.
It was an alternative news weekly, which are sadly endangered these days.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine how the world would have changed, and so much is about video, and even podcasts often have video components. And of course, we're all constantly scrolling our screens. And then there's this interesting dynamic, I think, just right now, where almost if you are faceless, you risk being perceived almost as an AI bot.
I was about to say there are really not true. That's really not you. You're not who you say you are.
Yeah.
Which is for years. I mean, this has been a thing as far as critics not revealing who they are.
Right, anonymity
and what was the
the
reason behind that, really? The original reason behind that, Bill?
So that we could have the every person experience. So that we could slip into a restaurant of any kind, whether it was a hot dog stand or the fanciest new restaurant in town, and just have the same general experience as the public, or at least, you know, an experience that someone who looks like me, you know, has, but without any special treatment. I just wanted to know what it was like to dine in the restaurant.
So you didn't call and say, hey, the LA Times is coming in? And,
never. Wow. Ever.
And this has been going on forever.
Since the 1960s, when Craig Claiborne, the food editor at the Los Angeles, I'm sorry, when Craig Claiborne, the food editor of the New York Times, really established what is modern day restaurant criticism in the country.
So, and that's what a lot of us, that's what we've been used to. That's right.
It's in our minds, right? And even in pop culture, the restaurant critic that sneaks in and makes, you know, villainous remarks and scathing opinions and slithers away. But I've been doing this almost a quarter century now, and so many of the people who do come into the profession now, the shrinking profession, as so much of journalism is, and we can talk more about that later, even this week, where the news, you know, is full of that. But
your paper for sure.
Yeah, my paper, the Washington Post.
Yes.
But the younger critics have lived their whole lives online.
That's exactly right.
And
social media, everything.
Yeah, and so it would be hard to scrape their identities and the images that already exist out there. And so they're showing that you don't really have to be anonymous. It's still, I would say it's ideal forever. In a perfect world, I would love to have shown, you know, never shown my face. It is strange. I'm still very much getting used to this reality, but so many young critics, I'm thinking particularly of Mackenzie Chung-Fagan, who is in San Francisco at the Chronicle, is just doing a fantastic job and says what she needs to say and says it fairly, and you know, does videos about her reviews as well.
So it's been okay for you since you've gone public?
Yeah, I think it's mostly just in my own head, you know.
Because you were doing it anonymously for so long.
Yes, and even longtime friends or even, you know, chefs and restaurant owners will DM me on Instagram and be like, "It's so weird to see your face," and I'm like, "I know."
I could just
Weirder
imagine.
for me, yes.
Well, because I wanted our audience to really kind of understand how long it was the norm to be anonymous. And almost every movie, every series that we've seen, I'm going to
Yes.
mention Bear in a moment, but I want to get back to you, Bill, and your journey to restaurant critic. It didn't start out that way. You had dreams of becoming a pop star or turned actor. So now, despite your Hollywood dreams, you say food was your thing even when you were a teenager?
Yeah, I think I was a kid who had a lot of interests. Sometimes people don't know what they wanted to be in the world, and I almost wanted to be too many things. So singing
Same.
So singing as a teenager won out. In terms, I went to Berklee College of Music. I started there for singing, and then I transferred to Emerson. Both schools are in Boston, and got a degree in acting. But I was always super interested in not just in like just eating, just like kind of shoving food in my face, but from a young age, like 8 years old, when my parents would very occasionally take me to a nicer restaurant, you know, that wasn't a common thing. But I remember the first time they took me at 8, I was like, what is this? Like, the food seems so much more like, you know, I didn't have the language for it, but just like wow, like it tastes, there's more going on, so much more going on than what we eat at home. And there are things that exist that I had no idea existed. It just really like sparked my imagination.
That's fabulous. So it really started at a young age then.
And then I was, you know, my poor parents, I was a bane to them. By the time I was 13, I was reading a critic named Elizabeth Large, who was at the Baltimore Sun. I grew up in the suburbs of Baltimore, and I would be like, hey, you know, this French bistro just opened, you know, let's go. And they'd be like, we're, you know, maybe for your birthday, kid, but we went, and I was dazzled by it.
Now, did you cook yourself at home, even at an earlier age?
I did because, again, there's that notion of not being able to afford to have these fabulous restaurant experiences. So I was like, what can I duplicate at home? Can I swirl a thin layer of batter around in a pan to make a crepe, and then kind of squeeze it with orange juice and set it on fire, you know?
I would have loved to be your roommate. Let me just put it that way.
they ate a lot of interesting stuff, my college roommates. Yeah, I was always cooking for people.
Oh, that's terrific. So now let's kind of fast forward to your career. You've been a restaurant critic for, what, 25 years or so, and you've
Almost
worked
25 years.
with 6 publications. So talk to us about the different dining scenes that you've worked in and what makes them unique, each one. If you can do that. That's a lot.
Great question. Sure. No, I'll try and make that as quick as possible. I started in Atlanta. I actually had 2 staff jobs in Atlanta, starting with Creative Loafing, the alternative news weekly that was really viable back then, really exciting. And Atlanta was exciting at first because being in the South, it was the international hub of the South. And so there was a regional identity, but also a sense of the global cuisines. There's a strip called Buford Highway that has become ever more this this destination where so many cultures collide. So you'll have Vietnamese cuisines and Salvadoran cuisines and regional Chinese cuisines and regional Mexican cuisines. And that was a great primer, I will say, to skip ahead for Los Angeles. But from Atlanta, I skipped to San Francisco.
I know the dining scene.
Right, a mecca. I learned
More
so
Michelin
much.
stars.
Right, more Michelin stars. I was the second critic under the then lead critic at the San Francisco Chronicle, Michael Bauer. So he got to go to all the mega fancy tasting menu restaurants, and I was more hustling, again, kind of covering the Chinese cuisines and Japanese cuisines, and I learned so much there. And of course, when you have a taste of California produce, it's hard to ever go back. But wanting to kind of further my career, I jumped to Dallas, Texas, which was a fascinating transition. Dallas readers, have a lot of opinions, and they were you're like a carpetbagger, from California, not really understanding. I had more of a Southern background.
Did you eat a lot of meat?
I will say I've never eaten more meat, and probably never drank as much in my career. I was consuming a lot, but still, Texas is its own unique place, own unique culture. I loved being there for that reason. I loved getting to understand that a little bit. I went back to Atlanta. What was cool about jumping back to Atlanta Magazine was,
okay.
What was cool then is the South was coming into its own in terms of food. Chefs were, of all backgrounds, were kind of more appreciating where they were. So Black chefs were cooking their heritage. Chefs from, I'm thinking of a chef from South India who kind of melded the ingredients of the South that she grew up in with the South that became her home.
Ooh,
and
how interesting.
yeah, so there was rice was a common ingredient, okra was a common ingredient. She was, So my career was going along like that, and then I got an extraordinary opportunity in the spring of 2014. Eater, a publication with a national base, but also local city sites, was really coming into its own. It had just been bought by Vox Media, and they gave Eater, an influx of financial support. And the founder and the editor-in-chief dreamed up this idea for a person who would just wander the country full time, going as many places as they could to dine and write about eating in every corner of America.
What a job.
What a job. An angel in New York food media, because that's so the center of things. I was worried I didn't stand a chance when I applied, but somebody put in a good word for me. And I think because I'd already jumped around a bit, they gave me the job. So I did that for 5 years.
That's incredible.
It was incredible.
Okay, there are so many different restaurants in New York City, but I have to just throw out one. Samuel Markinson.
Oh, sure.
Red Rooster.
Many. Red Rooster in Harlem and Aquavit. And he's grown so much. It's a great, and that's a wonderful example too, I think, of a chef, exploring the real roots of American cuisine, which are deeply entrenched in Black excellence.
Yeah.
And even though, he has direct Ethiopian roots, kind of connecting the heritage and connecting those dots in incredible ways.
Oh, I love it. Now, I'm going to ask you about LA's dining scene, though,
Please.
and how it's changed since you started at the LA Times.
So I've been here 7 years,
okay.
Yes. And I will say when I started with Eater, they let me create my own I'll say when I started with Eater that they let me create my own itinerary, which was incredible. And the first place that I came was Los Angeles.
Ah.
Yeah.
And then you decided you wanted to be here.
I knew right away this was the city that I wanted to live in America.
What was it about LA, besides what everybody else? Besides, you weren't coming here going, well, let's see, now, if I would have really stuck with singing or...
Right, I had given that up. I wasn't like, how can I come be a late-aged star? No, it is the incredible diversity and creativity. It's the ways, particularly that started last decade in the 2000s in Los Angeles, where people were creating third culture cuisines, personal narrative cuisines. In other words, where their parents had come from or grandparents had come from or where they had come from, with the incredible California produce, with the sense of imagination, and the audience that's receptive. Like, if it's delicious, will follow you where you're going.
I love that. And that's your reviews with the different restaurants and foods that you like. That speaks volumes. I've told people even before we were going to televise our conversation, Well, what does he say? Listen, go look him up.
Thank you.
And look, he
Please
does the
read the LA
101
Times.
best restaurants. You would be shocked, and a lot of them are. And we'll go back into, because that is a good question to ask you, just how people come up with their own brands of what's the best restaurant. They're going to pick a hotel that is more famous than any other and say, oh, well, that's got to have one of the best restaurants. And I go, not necessarily.
Yeah, not necessarily.
Well, let's talk about podcasts. I know you like them. How has that changed the dining landscape for you?
Well, I think podcasts are great because people with an entrenched sense of expertise and curiosity get to explore things, talk things through in a longer format. And I think particularly in Los Angeles, because we spend so much time in traffic, you know, we've got our podcasts lined up. And so I think, I mean, Evan Kleiman at KCRW, if I'm okay to say.
Oh, sure, yeah.
You know, you can listen to Good Food, her program, as a podcast, but she's been kind of paving the way for how people talk about food in Los Angeles for years, and I'm grateful to her.
Okay, I've got another quote from you. You talk about your younger counterparts making the point of saying foregoing anonymity is equalizing. Talk to us about that.
Fancy restaurants often have the financial backing to hire PR companies to get the word out, to have some expertise in guiding them through the worlds of media and social media. And that also includes some secret, unpublic photos of restaurant critics. I know they're out there. I have seen them hanging on kitchen walls. And the corner taqueria that is excellent and expresses a very specific part of Mexican culture, a specific place, a town even, they don't have that kind of budget.
Right.
And so showing your face means that everyone gets an opportunity to know who's coming, who's walking through the door, even if we never announce ourselves, which we make a point not to. I will say, really to that point, that just this week, a food writer was visiting from out of town. A lot of people come to LA because it's so interesting to eat here. And I took him to one of my favorite street taco vendors, El Russo. And they have not been popping up as much because
sure.
Yeah.
You're going to say
yes,
the immigration rate.
because of the immigration raids. And so they've been a little more subtle about, you know, communicating where they are, and I've really respected that. And I haven't had their tacos in 8 months. And so since I showed my face, the taquero, I walked up, his name is Walter, and he was like, oh, now everyone knows what you look like. And that was really the first experience I'd had where I was like, hi, you know, hi, Walter, yes. You know, and he was like, please let me take a picture with you. And I was like, okay, but yeah.
This is when, as we're talking, when you really think about someone who has a job, makes a living, and really makes it a point not to reveal who they are. That's pretty incredible. I do want to ask you this question.
Yeah.
Did you wear disguises sometimes?
Occasionally.
Okay.
And only in Los Angeles, after I had made friends with a very successful costume designer, and he would help me find a wig person and get me glasses and change into kinds of clothes I would never wear. Were they convincing? Yeah. Sometimes I would think like, oh, I'm gonna grow out my hair a little bit and it gets a little curly and I'm gonna put on a set of glasses. And I'd try and walk into a restaurant, you know, I tried this in Dallas thinking how, you know, Clark Kent I was. And they were like, hi. She was literally like, good evening, Mr. Addison. Oh, do you need glasses now? And I was like, right, this is so ridiculous.
Were you
like, stop
embarrassed?
this. Yes. I was embarrassed.
But that's just how crucial the job was.
Right. It just meant I needed to work harder. It just keeping a low
disguises.
profile in the first place. Yes.
Well, Bill, this is probably, well, it is serious because it certainly was at the time. I can't help but ask you about the pandemic. How did you navigate during that period of time when most restaurants were either closed or they certainly had restrictions?
It ended up being an incredibly rich time to write about dining culture in a way that I never could have imagined, because necessity was absolutely a mother of invention in that situation, meaning so many chefs figured out what they could do at home and sell to people just to make a living. And so it was a different experience running around to people's porches and the curbs in front of their apartments, and they're handing out bags of food or just leaving them there, and you pick them up and wipe them down, as we were doing in the very beginning when we understood so little about the virus. But I would say one of the great stories of this decade is how many exceptional restaurants in Los Angeles were born from those very difficult times.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Any?
Sure. I'm thinking
Please.
of a Filipino restaurant called Kuya Lord, where he's making beautiful feasts that he would wrap in banana leaves to as almost delivery vehicles as they kind of once were originally. Now he has a restaurant in Melrose Hill. I'm thinking of
that's amazing.
a pizza restaurant I love called Quarter Sheets. I'm thinking of a Korean restaurant called Yangban. I'm sorry, a Korean restaurant called Perilla that specializes in banchan, the kind of small dishes that often precede a meal in Korean restaurants, and that is the specialty of this chef. And she opened at the edge of Chinatown in a small development, and it keeps continuing. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because most people, and I will say this, Bill, when you go around to different areas, and I don't care where it is, you see no longer in business, or you see a for sale or for lease sign. So I'm so happy to hear about people, restaurants surviving or even getting their own brick and mortar from not having one from the pandemic. But there are others, right? Survivability has been difficult.
Yeah, make no mistake that, that is definitely a silver lining, but this has been an incredibly difficult time for very obvious reasons that we all know. I mean, first, essentially a twin epidemic, a cultural one as well, then twin strikes, then twin fires, and the current ongoing raids. It's been a really tough decade for restaurant owners, and it's always a fine line, because for so many years, restaurant criticism, as a journalist, it was like, you are for the consumer, the reader. It's service journalism, and as the profession evolved, it was about being a good writer too, as so many other voices came into the space. The only thing that separates you is your ability to tell a good story or to write compelling sentences. And now I feel pretty honest saying, like, I worked in restaurants in my 20s. I love restaurants. And so there is some aspect of being an advocate or a cheerleader, and it's kind of threading the line between sometimes writing reviews that aren't always, across the board positive. There's so much in Los Angeles. I rarely write about.
You're being honest.
Yeah, being honest, but then
you have
also
a lot of empathy.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I want places to succeed. I want them to be able to do their best, and I want them to have an audience that receives their best.
Bill, this is Black History Month, and I love the fact that you are so eclectic in the kinds of restaurants and foods that you sample. So do you have any favorites for Black History Month that you can recommend?
I do, yes, and many of these are on the 101 Best Restaurants in Los Angeles guide that we write at the Los Angeles Times every year. I've written it for the past 2 years with my wonderful colleague, Jen Harris. So I would first the first that comes to mind is Tuhome's in Inglewood, bringing together a West African perspective with kind of a global menu. So delicious, so interesting, great brunch. Doolin's on Crenshaw is a special place, kind of almost I'd call great migration cuisine. You have talked to Greg on this program, so you know Somerville is a really fun place in South LA that has a jazz club, kind of meets steakhouse vibe. Love that. For breakfast, 2 places that comes to mind is Poppy and Seed in downtown, and a great place called Grits and Waffles that has a second location now in Koreatown. So those are 5 great places to get you started.
What advice would you have for chefs who want to go into opening their own restaurant?
I'm not sure whether anyone really wants to hear this advice or not, but for me, it is about cooking what you really want to eat, not what you think the diners want you to eat. So I would say is just a broad example that when you think of Italian food, there are so many micro cuisines in the regions of Italy. There's so much that we never see in the restaurant space, but most every menu has cacio e pepe and, you know, pappardelle with the ragu and
Bolognese.
bolognese, a pomodoro, like things that everyone knows. And I understand, like, people need familiarity, people look for comfort, but I think restaurants that really stand out tend to be ones that are like, let me look, you know, left when everyone else is looking right.
I love that. That's what I would look for.
Okay, yeah, see? We're on the same page. We can switch jobs.
We can switch jobs. You know, now, this is one of my favorite questions to ask you. When you travel, like internationally, do you try different kinds of food? Or what do you look, or do you know where you want to go? You know, what restaurants you'd like to go to? If it's a restaurant, could be something just, you know, a roadside place.
Yeah, it's the pleasure of traveling personally and professionally to spend a lot of energy thinking about where I'm going to eat beforehand. Once I went to Greece right after I started the Eater job, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to show up and kind of let serendipity happen. And I kind of didn't eat that well, and I was mad at myself for not doing the research. So even I had a funny story when I was in Morocco a few years ago where a friend who wrote a lot about Moroccan food culture gave me very specific instructions to a place in the Medina in Marrakesh, just a storefront, really, and described what it would look like. And we had a guide walking us through, and he was like, "Oh, sir, look at this menu, or look at this menu." And I was like, "I want to go here." And he was like, I don't even know this place. It had kind of a funny, long, formal, official name. And I just was following the instructions. He was like, no, I don't think you want that. And finally, we reached it. Like, I looked at the description. I was like, this is it. And he looked around and he was like, oh, Fatima's place? Oh, no, this is where I go to eat, like, after, like, I drop off the tourist.
Aww.
And I was like, now you know. Yes. I want to eat really where you want to eat.
Wow.
That's part of the fun of digging into a culture. Yeah.
So do you like exotic foods?
I am curious about almost every cuisine that exists on the planet. My longtime best friend is Lebanese, and so from her I have a real love of cuisine from that part of the world. And I've been to Beirut and the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon, and it's really one of the world's great cuisines. So yes, I travel to eat.
Now, is there anything that you won't try?
I don't love hard-boiled eggs.
I did not expect you to say that.
I know. I would rather eat crunchy insects than deviled eggs.
No.
Sure. Yes, they're a good source of protein.
So, okay. So I imagine when you've gone to Vietnam, you've had, of course, they have so many different delicacies.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Malaysia
Yes.
and different. Okay, so Bill will eat insects. All right. He doesn't like hard-boiled eggs. That is so incredible.
A jammy egg, sure.
A
Soft scrambled egg, sure. But
But forget the hard boil.
No, it's the egg white.
boring?
It's just the egg. It's a texture. Most people may have texture issues about other things. I love so many of the expressions of textures that are important in other cuisines, but I just don't like the texture of hard-boiled egg white.
Okay.
Yeah.
So don't give Bill
Please
hard-boiled eggs.
don't, no deviled eggs.
Now, I bet you've thought about this, because this isn't something that anybody would ask you. Do you have a perfect meal?
Ooh, do I have a perfect meal? No. I can make one up
Okay.
on the spot for you. I would say I would start, if I was having a last meal, it would start with like beautiful Lebanese meze, many small, hummus and grape leaves and all those kind of exquisite things. And then I would have a crab feast.
Any particular kind that you like blue crab or?
Yes, I respect, I'm in California and I respect the Dungeness crab and I eat it whenever it's in season, but my heart belongs to the Maryland blue crab, the Chesapeake blue crab. So it would be a steamed crab feast. And then I would probably I would just make my own. I used to make desserts in restaurants many lifetimes ago. And so I like to make ice cream. So I would probably make a
you
peach
make
crisp.
ice cream?
Yes.
I mean, from scratch. We're not talking.
Yeah, sure, like blood orange caramel ice cream or
goodness.
bourbon vanilla ice cream. Yeah, that's my dinner party trick these days.
This has just been wonderful. Okay, I have one more question.
Please.
And I could talk to you all day, obviously.
Yeah, this is fun.
Would you advise food critics to all reveal themselves now?
No, if you don't show your face, hide it as long as possible. Yes.
Really?
No, yeah, do it. Do it until the culture will catch up with you so quickly these days between phone cameras and how easy it is to like snap a picture of you. But stay down low as long as possible and see what it's like to experience restaurants when someone's not, recognizing you and giving you a little bit of special attention. No, and then look around the dining room and see how other people, what the expressions are on their face and what they've ordered as opposed to what you're ordering.
And you know what? Now that you mention that, I can imagine when you were in disguise, some of them would automatically, I shouldn't say automatically, but sort of like, yep, he's a food critic, because maybe you were paying too close attention?
Yes, I mean, the joke from my friends for years is I do like wine, and so I would talk with sommeliers, with the wine staff, and I'd be like, blah, 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 white Burgundy, blah, 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 and they'd leave the table and they'd be like, you know that nobody talks about wine like that, right? Like, you think you're like hiding yourself, so.
You know what to pair with
Yeah,
what?
also I order a lot, so the table is very full, which is probably another tell, but it's fun to order
And you're
a lot.
in great shape.
I appreciate that.
I had so much fun talking to you today.
Me too.
So thank you.
Thanks for having me
Are
for
you
my
kidding?
for my first
For your
television
inaugural? I
Yes.
love it. Now we're going to be seeing you all over the place. So I hope you come back.
I will.
All right.
Thank
you, Bill. And thank you for watching The Conversation with Pat Harvey. Make sure to check our YouTube page for future episodes. This is fun.